হ্যালো আসসালামু আলাইকুম দিস ইজ নাফিজ আল তারিক অ্যান্ড এই শর্ট ভিডিওটিতে আমি একটি পার্সোনাল ফাইন্যান্স কনসেপ্ট নিয়ে আলোচনা করব ইন দ্য কনটেক্সট অফ ইনফ্লেশন হুইচ ইজ এক্সট্রিমলি ইম্পর্টেন্ট ইজ দ্য your own personal inflation rate, but it's like meflation. Rather than looking at the headline inflation, one should look at meflation. So what meflation is? So meflation is your own personal direct impact on the changing cost of living to your personal budget, to your personal labor income, to your personal portfolio. So what investors should do? So rather than focusing on the headline inflation published by most countries' National Statistical Bureau, one should look at inward in their own inflation scenario where they are more vulnerable, and they should take exposure and try to hedge investment portfolio according to their inflation experience. Everyone's inflation experience is different. For example, আমি যে গুডসটা যে পরিমাণে কনজিউম করি বা যে গুডসটা কনজিউম করি আপনি হয়তো ওই গুডসটা ওই পরিমাণে কনজিউম করেন না বা ওই পার্টিকুলার গুডসটা কনজিউম করেন না। সো আমার ইনফ্লেশন এক্সপিরিয়েন্স মাইট বি ভেরি ডিফারেন্ট ফ্রম ইয়োর ইনফ্লেশন এক্সপিরিয়েন্স। ফর এক্সাম্পল, a very young person having 30 to 35 years of age with a stock heavy portfolio who might have a house with fixed rate mortgage loan, his income might increase with the changes in inflation. So that person might not be worse off because of increasing in inflation, or a moderate level of inflation might be good for that person. On the other hand, if you are a retired person or old age person, so in that case, and if you don't have income beyond your investment portfolio, in that case you may be very vulnerable to increasing inflation, and the last thing you should be worried about is the deflation. So how investors should focus on in an inflationary scenario, because in the whole world the current buzzword is increasing inflation, and from a personal finance perspective, how investors can focus on their portfolio. So in an inflationary scenario, bond loses their insurance quality, so income from fixed income instrument might not be as good in an inflationary scenario because the real return eat away by the inflation. So investors can focus on investing in equity securities that has where the company has the ability to pass through the rising cost of living, and the real assets, commodities, gold also perform very well in an inflationary scenario. So what's the case for an investor in Bangladesh? In Bangladesh, the market is not as deep as in other countries. এবং আমাদের দেশে the investment market is plain vanilla. So এখানে not many instruments are there to invest in exposure to have real assets or investment in alternative asset classes. So in case of inflationary environment, equity of companies perform very well, so one can focus on investment in equity securities where the companies have passed through ability of inflation. They can also invest in real assets or land. In the COVID world or the post-pandemic world, the investor are focusing more and more on alternative asset classes like land, real estate and others. But in Bangladesh, the accessibility for investors to invest in real assets are not that much, and also the investment value is very high. So because of the high unit value, many people do not have the ability to invest in real assets. So if anybody wants to have a liquid exposure, they can invest in equities. However, in the context of forming the portfolio, every investor should consider their age, their life cycle, and considering the liquidity needs of the portfolio, investor can form a well-diversified portfolio focusing on equity, real assets, and other alternative investments in an inflationary scenario. Whereas in a deflationary scenario, the bond can be a very good sources of return, because normally the deflation and recession goes hand on hand, and in that case people might lose return from equity securities, but bond holds their insurance quality during recession and deflationary scenario. So to sum up, rather than looking at headline inflation number, people should look at their own personal inflation rate, where their vulnerability is, and they should form their portfolio accordingly. In a Bangladesh context, from an inflationary perspective, you can focus on equity securities of companies that has passed through ability, focusing on a long-term exposure on those company. And if you have the ability and have the advantage of focusing on long duration asset classes like land, real estate. In that case, you can focus on real assets as well to get hedge from inflationary environment. Thank you for watching the video. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you.